Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Whitest Mexican You Know podcast. I'm your host, Antonio, aka the Whitest Mexican You Know. Every episode, I try to have some of the best local Las Vegas comedians on here. Today is no different. I got my man, Darrin Chase here.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm great. How have you been?
Dude, I've been a roller coaster, but it's been amazing lately.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Just got off your fucking New York trip?
Just got back from eating 39 slices of pizza in the Big Apple.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. 18 different places.
Yeah? Damn. And you had a fucking intestinal problem. Why are you eating so many pizzas? Didn't you have some, like, gastrointestinal problem not too long ago?
Yes. But in that situation, I was living on Little Caesars pizza, and I was eating, like, a full Little Caesars pizza per day.
Jesus.
I would get a hot and ready, eat 4 slices, and then I would a couple hours later eat 2 slices, and then a couple hours later eat 2 more slices,
Jesus.
and then a couple hours later I'd buy a full hot and ready and do the whole thing all over again. And that's how I lived in LA for a couple of years.
Jesus
because it was $5 for a meal, and I could get 3 meals out of that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And I did that for a while, and that's what messed me up. The New York slices, they're so thin, you're not getting that kind of
right. There was a place when I lived in Denver. It was this little hole-in-the-wall Chinese place, and they had one of those to-go containers, and for $5.50, they would pack the shit out of it and then give you a drink as well with, like, an egg roll. And that's what I lived off of. It's like, because that was at least 2 meals right there.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
You lived in Denver?
Yeah. I lived there for, like, 2 years.
Did I know that?
Maybe.
I moved here from there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. How long did you live out there?
For a year.
About a year?
Yeah, I worked at the Church of Cannabis.
Oh, really? Oh, shit. I worked at a fucking CSC, Concentrate Supply.
Okay.
That's where I worked for a while.
Yeah. I was out there doing comedy, and then I picked up a little side gig at the Church of Cannabis in Denver. It was very fitting for my brand, awesome. I guess. But
about what year did you live out there?
2021 to 2022.
Oh, okay. So literally,
I moved. When I got to Vegas, I was still technically living in Denver. I had a place there, and the people I lived with, I took all my stuff with me to Vegas because I assumed I was probably going to stick around because I kept on getting more bookings and stuff.
Right.
But my plan was to keep my spot in Denver and maybe go back there and talk to my friends about my plan. Yeah. Before I could talk to them, they went down in my place and saw all my stuff was gone. Oh, which I was like, "You did what?" But then they go, "Did you move out?" And I didn't reply because I still had like a week and a half on my lease. Yeah, I was like, "I don't gotta say anything. Like, I nothing on my lease if I keep my stuff here."
Right.
And right away they posted that my apartment was available for rent, like available immediately. And I was like, "Oh,
that's fucked."
Well, thank you. Now I'm not coming back and not paying you nothing. Like, wow, you didn't have to do that, but thank you for doing that. You know, you just gave me a free. And people are like, dude, you can sue them for that. I was like, I could, but I'm just gonna walk away from it. That's wild. But yeah, so I liked Denver, and I was starting to get in the groove out there.
Right.
But I just knew more people out here, and Vegas is just a better hub to be out of. But Denver's a good scene.
Yeah, I never did comedy out there. I started comedy when I moved out here, but it was fun. I love Denver. It's just the fucking winters. That's what fucked me up.
The thing about Denver winter, though, I mean, it's so crazy. Like, everyone says certain things about certain areas. Everyone says everything about their own area. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. People say that everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Denver's the one place where it's like, that's accurate to an extreme degree. The wind, it's the craziest wind I've been at.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is about Denver is you don't get the freezing temperatures like you do in the Midwest,
right,
and the upper Northeast. So the ground never freezes. So when it snows, and a couple days later it's above 50 degrees,
right,
it all goes away, and the grass is still perfectly green.
Yeah.
So you'll have a blizzard one day, still a blizzard the next day, and then you wake up on day 3 and it's like, it's springtime in 70. What is going on here? There's no snow, no trace of any snow at all. Everything's green and beautiful. And you're like, all right. And then 2 days later, you're like, blizzard.
Yeah.
What the heck?
It's fucking wild.
Wow. But it doesn't stick around so long. Whereas like in Minnesota, where I'm from, like, it'll freeze, snow, and then like freeze again,
Yeah.
and then snow on top of that,
Yeah.
and then freeze again, and then snow on top of that. So you have to walk across the yard to get something. You'll step on like what you think is fresh powder, and you hit like some ice, and you're like, okay, and you break through that into more fresh powder,
Yeah.
and you get all kinds of snow in your boot. Current day, right now in Minnesota, someone posted a picture of the mall in my former town I used to live in. There's still a snow hill. It's jet black because
Yeah.
it's all dirt,
Yeah.
but it's still over 10 feet tall and about 30 feet long. It's a massive pile that's still there.
Yeah. I remember that type of shit from when I lived in Chicago.
Yeah.
And it was like you just see these mounds that would sit there for months.
They're just filthy.
It's fucking crazy.
The first time it snows is like cool, but after it freezes and hardens, all that stuff, and it sticks around.
Yeah.
And like in Denver, it goes away, but in Minnesota, it's all stick around, and then dirt and whatever, it melts, and then it hardens and freezes, and more snow. So it just gets this filthy color. You're like, oh, I hate it so much. Just that crunchy. Ugh.
Yeah.
It's like, but again, I didn't mind Denver's winter, other than make up your mind. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Is it spring? Is it winter? Is it hailing? Is it windy? What's going on?
Yeah.
I think Seattle is the better version of Denver in terms of weather. It's because everyone thinks of Seattle is like, oh, it's all rainy and whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, but they don't get the snow. Everywhere gets that gloomy grayness. It might be snowy everywhere. You don't really realize how gray it is because the ground is so snowy.
Yeah.
But like Seattle, it's like, it's beautiful out there.
That's awesome.
But like geographically, it's just hard to expand on the land. So you can only build upwards on these buildings,
right?
But you can't add more roads. So it's the worst traffic of anywhere I've been.
Damn, really?
Yeah, Seattle's traffic is of all the places in the country, LA, Vegas, New York, Seattle's traffic is like, oh my God, this is horrible.
That's fine. It's just they're not built for it.
It's just there's the Puget Sound, you got Lake Washington, you got all the you're driving one way and all of a sudden you realize you're up a mountain, you have to go back the opposite way. Like, Jesus, I don't know. Yeah. But
that. I mean, what made me want to leave Denver is slipping on ice one too many times. Like when it was the dead of a blizzard. I just got off work. It's like fucking 2 a.m. and I'm walking to my apartment complex and just slip, bust my ass. And it's one of those where it's like, if you trip and fall, like you kind of look around. Oh, did anybody see that? I just laid there for a minute. I was like, this fucking sucks. I was all bruised up and shit.
I don't think I've ever fallen on ice.
Oh, it's the worst.
I got that balance of a mountain goat on myself. I grew up in Minnesota, so I'm just born for it. I don't know. Like Denver, I mean, when did you leave there?
I left there, I was there 2015 to 2017.
Okay.
And then I went out to California for a couple of years.
So we didn't cross paths.
Yeah, that'd have been fun though.
and you started comedy, and what year? I'm gonna turn this into my podcast.
Yeah, right. Now you're interviewing me. Well, how long have you been doing comedy?
10 years, just over 10 years. Started in Seattle.
Right.
So started.
And you've been all over, right?
Yeah, I went to L.A. right after Seattle, but I'm from Minnesota, so I would travel to there and try to drop in. But I would drive from L.A. to Minnesota and then pass through. So I stopped in Denver back in 2015 or something. Just did a couple of open mics, met a few people.
Right.
St. Louis, a few places. I just meet a few people here and there, and then
just move on.
And as you're passing back through, hey, I'm coming through, and then and we can drop into shows and
right.
It's just, I always encourage when people are driving through an area, just Google any open mics. If you get just about around 6 o'clock, you're like, I'm just driving. Oh, let's pull off the road and do a mic.
Yeah.
But I would do extreme lengths of driving for no pay, and
that's wild.
But
and what was the city that you were in the longest doing stand up?
Probably L.A.
L.A.
Yeah, L.A. is where I left Seattle like a year in.
Oh, okay.
And I spent the majority of my time in LA, and then when the shutdown happened and stuff, I was on the road, and this last few years have been kind of broken up between Vegas, the road, and Denver.
Right.
But,
all right.
Yeah, LA was home, hung out at the Comedy Store quite a bit. It was,
and that was like the prime years of the Comedy Store, when it was really big.
The second wave, because I mean, then there are 80s and stuff. They have the crazy days, but then the 90s and 2000s they have the dark days.
Yeah.
And I came in, I went to visit the Comedy Store at the end of the dark days. Okay. I just booked a flight to LA one day and just wanted to check it out from Seattle.
Right.
And a friend of mine told me if I ever came to LA, he'd show me around, and he brought me to the Comedy Store let me go in every nook and cranny of that building. And that was
shit.
in January of 2014 when Tommy was still in charge.
Right.
And Joe Rogan hadn't gone back there yet. They had this room called Turned Up Tuesdays. That was their big black night in the main room with a DJ. And it was the wildest show I'd ever seen. The roast battle had just started up at, they're in the belly room.
Right.
And Kill Tony was the Monday night thing. At the time I went to the Comedy Store, they were filming Kill Tony 35.
Oh, wow.
And current day, they're,
like 600 or
it's
something
some
like
crazy
that.
amount. But yeah, and then they would have the original room would just be comics cycling through. And they had like 8 people in the audience. And, Bobby Lee would just storm off because he'd be bombing or whatever. And it's like, I took that back to Seattle and I was like, wow, I don't deserve, if those guys are getting that, then I don't deserve anything different, whatever.
Right.
But the Comedy Store was, I went back to LA because of that. Cause even in the dark days, I was like, I loved the vibe and the hangout.
Right.
And I was kind of welcomed in. I used to work for a weed company, so I had that in. But I was able to go. Like I said, I knew all the nooks and crannies already, so I could kind of, I knew, I was invited through. Most of the time, I was invited through. Either way, I would go every time I went back to visit. So I went back in March of 2012, I'm sorry, 2014. Tommy was still there. I went back in May of 2014, and Tommy had been replaced by Adam Egget.
Right.
And the vibe had started shifting.
Really?
And then in September, I went back, and Joey Diaz started going back there. Joe Rogan hadn't yet gone back there yet. And soon after, Rogan started going there. And I moved there December of 2014, and I was in LA full-time after that.
Right.
And at that point, it just became so productive.
Yeah.
And less of still the hangout factor, but more of like the networking. Like everyone was there. It was
right.
the place to be.
Yeah.
Chappelle was having little parties in the back street bar.
That's
like
awesome.
Just whoever was there in the audience. You never knew who was watching the show that night and who was there.
That's
and stuff.
fucking awesome. Because I lived in California, like Santa Barbara, for a couple years. And I only went to the Comedy Store one time, and it was just to catch a random show on a random night or whatever. And it was fucking mind-blowing. Like, just the lineup they had, like Rogan, fucking all these people on the lineup. And then I saw your Brody Stevens pin. I fucking watched him late night close out the fucking show, dude. It was ridiculous. I was so glad that I actually got to see him live, because he's like a legend. Everybody talks about how fucking great that late night and him closing out the shows were. It was fucking beautiful.
He walks around and, where are you from? Arizona. What did I just talk about? The pitcher from Arizona. Who do I know from college? But like, no, funny you mentioned, 10 years ago, yesterday was the first time I met Brody Stevens in Seattle. He came up there to promote his, he was recording a show called, it was that Brody Stevens Comedy Central 5-part miniseries.
Right.
But they were recreating a version of a TV show he used to have in the day called Jews and Samoans Rule Seattle. And this time it was him and Tana Manu, and they were going to do a new version of that called Jews and Samoans Rule the World. And they were recording the next day. 10 years ago today was the day that they were recording it. So the day before, I barely met Brody outside of this comedy club. This bar that hosted comedy shows, and barely met him, in a circle. The next day, I go to the place where they're going to record the show, and again, I was new into comedy, but also like a fan of all this stuff, and I want to see them. They're recording a TV show and everything. Yeah. So I got there kind of early, and they were like, "Hey, you want to help us out?" So I'm moving stuff around, and I'm just kind of with the crew. Yeah. And then I'm on the stage testing the microphones, and I'm doing Brody's voice. I'm like, "Yes, you got it." And Brody walks in. He goes, "There he is, Darrin." And I was like,
"Oh shit,
yo, you remember my name? Like, wow,
that's fucking dope."
And so the first time I went to LA, I saw Brody at the Comedy Store, and I was like, "Hey, what's up? I think about moving here. No." He's like, "Where are you gonna work?" I go, I don't know, man. I kind of want to come here to learn, and I'm not here to learn. I'm here to work. Where are you gonna work? And I was like, good point, man. Like, right? He's like, because it's like you're with the big dogs, man. You're not just here to play.
Yeah.
So I still went out there probably prematurely, but like my plan was to work at the Comedy Store, and I just never got into there. But I was always kind of able to hang out there, and like, you know, to a degree that probably annoyed some. But like, yeah. But now all those people went to Texas, and like, there's a split now. But
yeah,
I haven't yet gone to the Austin, the mothership, to see, you know, to visit all them yet.
right.
But it would be fun to you know, see
Dude,
that side
yeah.
of the crowd, you know, again. But
Yeah,
yeah, the Comedy Store, to watch the growth of some of these shows, to see what someone like Tony Hinchcliffe, like when I first met him, like I said, it was Kill Tony 35.
yeah,
He didn't have the power to make people stars.
right.
Now he's got coming to in June. Uncle Laser's coming to Wise Guys for a day.
Yeah,
It's like he's been doing comedy a year.
yeah.
I mean,
heard
that's
it's
impressive.
Like just
I mean,
a few months, I think.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
6 months.
yeah, and it's like
that.
you know, all because of the, you know, Kill Tony, the Tony Hinchcliffe rub. It's like that's his fan base is so rabid that it's wild. And again, and I've probably squandered a lot of opportunities. I used to smoke a lot of weed with that guy.
Yeah.
He was one of the people that hang out at the Comedy Store. I watched his, you know, in the back it'd be him and that kind of group of people and stuff. And to see like again the you know,
like everybody start taking off from there. That's really cool.
It is cool, and a lot of people too. I've seen people go from nothing to door guys to now writers on major shows and stuff. And you know, I don't know. As I say, I've seen other people do this, and I'm like, man, I just got done living in my car. You know, like, I obviously am not not a product of it at all.
Yeah, maybe you should have taken Brody's advice. Where are you gonna work?
Right? Yeah, but no, it was great to see. It was, you know, if anything, just to be out there and you learn a lot. And,
no, that's really cool. Like that's the kind of experience I feel like a lot of fucking comics would kill for, like myself included. Is like just to hang around with those guys and just, you know, tips and just being able to learn that way. That's fucking cool, man.
Yeah, it was great. Well, I mean, I was, you know, it wasn't like I was just hanging around there. I was also producing shows and stuff.
Right.
I was co-producer of a comedy show that was on Hollywood Boulevard at a Hooters.
Nice.
Yeah, and we'd have a lot of people like a lot of Comedy Store crossover coming over, like Don Barris or Ahmed, and like a few of these guys would come over and do spots. Eleanor Kerrigan, and the big explanation point to our last show at that Hooters. So Hooters on Hollywood Boulevard was not. It wasn't really set up well. They had upstairs with a staircase that goes up there, you know, no elevator, nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had an elevator, but people weren't running food. And either way, the girls that had to bring food up, they just weren't excited about bringing food upstairs. There was one waitress that liked to work with us, but most of them didn't want to work up there. But as the show progressed and as we started barking and doing a lot more promotion for it, we started filling the upstairs room up and making it more full upstairs than downstairs. Mm-hmm. And the waitresses didn't want to work there, you know, whatever. The management for that Hooters said, "You're stealing our business." We're like, we're stealing. They're buying your food and your beer. What are you talking about? Just the waitresses have to go upstairs now. We're bringing way more people into this Hooters. There was no one downstairs either.
Yeah.
You know, and like, so their idea was, no, you're stealing our business. We don't want to do comedy here anymore. So they said no more comedy.
That's wild.
And they sent us across. We ended up finding a spot across the street. But our last show there, the day that we knew was our last show, and just you couldn't have written this into a movie. We had barkers on the street. I was working at the top seat and people for this. We'd always had different rotating spots. You know, sometimes we ran and whatever, and somebody was on this. Mm-hmm. These couple of guys that were barking. Their version of the story is that they seen a guy walking down the street that they thought looked like Bill Burr. So they said, "Do you want us to come watch a comedy show?" And he goes, "No." And they go, "Holy fuck, that's Bill Burr."
No shit.
And they go, "Do you want to be on a comedy show?" He goes, "No." And then he keeps on walking, and he stops and he goes, "You guys got an audience?" And they go, yeah, we'll get a great one up there. He goes, "Yeah, fuck it, I'll stop in and do some time." Now, I didn't know that at the time, but I'm standing at the top of the stairs, and I see him just walking up the steps, and I just go, "Hey, man, thanks for doing this." Yeah. And he goes, "Yeah, no problem." And he's like, I was like, I didn't know if he might just be using the bathroom. That's where the bathroom was. Right. But like, he's walking through. He goes up, does some time, does 15 minutes and bounces. And the manager that night, I go, "Oh, you guys are idiots." He goes, "This was not my call."
Yeah.
He's like, "It was these other managers." And he's like, "I work in Hollywood. I don't get starstruck. That's my favorite comedian ever." He goes, "I am so mad about this." And the big F you to that Hooters, because again, how stupid they wouldn't have known that this was going to happen. But
still,
Bill Burr, the next day on his Thursday, Monday morning podcast, his version of the story, he goes, "Yeah, I was on Hollywood Boulevard watching a friend's movie premiere, and I was going to go to the Comedy Store, work on a spot, but it's the opposite way of where I wanted to go and where my car was, so I figured I'll skip it. And I'm walking down Hollywood Boulevard. I walk past a Hooters because they invited me in, had a show. They treated me like the president. It was a very good show. Had a great time." It was like the fact he shouted us out that way. And then like his Twitter retweeted my picture of him on the stage. And I was like, "Oh man, this is cool." It was just one of those like, we co-produced a show that Bill Burr dropped in on.
Yeah.
It was like, that's just kind of stuff that happened in Hollywood. That was just like, and all that time I was living in my car.
Right.
I was living in my car, sleeping in the front seat of a Chevy Cruise, and that's why I hung out at the Comedy Store so much, because like I was one of the homeless people.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But you always had weed.
I always had weed, or I'd lie. Well, no, sometimes you go there because that's you're out of weed, and you're like, if I go in the back, they're gonna be passing weed around, and that I'm glad I wasn't the only person that felt that way. I definitely have people that probably knew. There was a few nights that's why I was back there. But one of the comics, somebody goes, "The Comedy Store is where you come when you're out of drugs." Yeah. So everyone always has it here. He's going in the back, someone's doing something, handing something around, and whatever.
That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it was like if I was staying in for the night, I was in the back area of the Comedy Store that I definitely shouldn't have been in, called Sacred Grounds.
Right.
And it's out behind the kitchen.
Uh-huh.
And I was always a guest of like Jeff, the piano guy, who's been there. He's now passed away, but he was there since Richard Pryor days and all that stuff. He's seen everybody, and he would always welcome me back there. There was always door guys that was like, "Hey, can I smoke with you?" Like, "Yeah, come on," So I was always welcome, and I always knew when to leave if like certain people were back there that like,
right.
It's like, all right, they don't want my privacy, like whatever, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was always. First time I smoked with Chappelle, I mean, the only times I smoked with Chappelle was back there, but I got to smoke with him a few times back there, and like, just awesome. A few,
And did you have to like get used to that kind of like etiquette? Because some people don't know how to act around like people that, that they kind of idolize or whatever, and so they get real weird about it.
So when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I was a security guard for the Target Center in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the backstage security guard for the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Okay.
And at the time we had Kevin Garnett, then we got Latrell Sprewell, Sam Cassell, and we were like in the 03-04 season, they went to the Western Conference Finals. Kevin Garnett was the MVP. It was big time in Minnesota. That was our celebrities, and we had when I was a kid, my pennants on my wall would like for baseball would be Kirby Puckett from the Minnesota Twins. He was like the hero of Minnesota, and I had his pennants on the wall.
Right.
He used to come to the Target Center all the time just as a fan.
Yeah.
And he knew me by name. All the people that in Minnesota that all these people, like, I broke the fourth wall with a lot of these people early on, where I realized like, oh, they're just people. Like,
right,
I shoulder checked Kanye West back in the back hallway. Yeah, it was the Usher, Kanye West, Christina Milian tour.
Okay.
And I'm going down the stairway to leave the Target Center. This is before the event. There's like the outside, there's a fight happening outside or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm going down the stairway, short little stairway, and the door that usually like backup dancers and other people come in because the performers come in through the garage door,
right,
and get brought in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going down the stairs, looking up this way, talking to somebody, and I turn around and shoulder check a dude that was looking down in the same movement, and I catch him. I was like, "Oh, hey!" I didn't really know him, but I recognized his cheeks or whatever. Right. I pushed past him, and then later that night, I'm walking through the hallway, and he was walking down the hallway. It's me and the guard just doing rounds in the back, and Kanye goes, "Hey, what's up, man?" And this guard just like, "What the fuck was that about?" And I go, "Oh yeah, we've met." Yeah, but like interacting, I was a security guard in that sense, where it was like we had to work with a lot of different events and things, and I never really had that, and then
so kind of like you kind of popped your celebrity cherry pretty early and so it doesn't really phase you.
I used to go partying with the Timberwolves.
No shit.
I used to go to clubs, and when they would get their shout out, players would be like, "That's you too, D," and I'm, "What's up?" So I mean, like, and then I was a pro wrestler for a while and all that stuff. Where like,
yeah, that's right.
You kind of know that world of like, sometimes there's a bigger wrestler on the show, and like, and also being an entertainer. So I've never really had that starstruck.
Yeah.
Like, there's very few people.
Because I've only met a handful of like big comedians that I fucking you could say idolize or just but I like them or whatever, and fucking and I can tell that it's like you could fuck up this interaction very quickly, and so I try to say very little, just kind of, hey, how you doing, whatever. It's like we ran into Doug Stanhope at fucking Wise Guys one time.
Sure.
And
yeah.
he just came in, he just popped in out of nowhere. And so at the end of the show, we're all sitting back on that side door where everybody sits and smokes or whatever. And he comes out and he just lights up a cigarette, and they're waiting for an Uber. And we're just talking to him, like a handful of us, and just talking to Stanhope about like what comedy used to be when he was here in Vegas and stuff like that. And then, hilarious, my girl is just standing there, and there's a little lull in the conversation, and she turns to Stanhope and she goes, "Just want you to know you're a god." And he just hits a cigarette and goes, "Hmm." And then he just turns around and her fucking skin crawls. She's like, "Oh, fuck." And she like couldn't let it go for days. She was like, how did was it really bad? And I was like, you just don't say that type of shit.
I was on set with John Cena for the Transformers movie, and the restrooms were outside of the lot we were filming in.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to that, and I'm out by myself, and he just so happens to be walking in. It's just the two of us out there.
Yeah.
And as I'm walking past, I just go, "Hey, I was a wrestler too on the independent scene." And he just goes and keeps on walking. I was like, all right, maybe I mumbled, or maybe he's just in character. I don't know. A buddy of mine, I always give him shit for it. We were on the patio of the Comedy Store waiting for the potluck sign up, because every Monday night you get there early, and whatever. They used to do it different, but we're just hanging out on the Comedy Store patio. And Chris Rock pulls up. He's like filming something on his Periscope.
Mm-hmm.
He was in LA for something, and just showing people where he started. He's like, yeah, this is blah, blah. And as he's walking through, we're in the background of the video, just kind of standing there. And so they stop. He's leaving, and my buddy goes, "I know your brother." And Chris, same thing, just looks at him and goes. And my buddy that passed away recently got a similar response from these responses are great. I've got a few of these kind of stories. I had a response, so my buddy got one of these responses from Adam Sandler. Yeah. We were on set for Sandy Wexler, and he all day he was like, "Dude, I just want to get close enough to Adam Sandler." So Adam Sandler had an album with a sketch called Sex or Weightlifting, mm-hmm. where he'd play people an album. "I'm going to play you an album. I'm going to play you a recording. And you have to guess, is it people having sex or working out?"
Okay.
And the joke was always whatever. But it was the way he said sex. And so my buddy, he just loved it. So he goes, "I'm going to get close enough to Sandler." And to go, "Sex." And he did. And again, Adam just looks at me and goes, and then I got that exact response from John Lovitz.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was doing audience work for Funny You Should Ask, mm-hmm. which is a show that had a panel of 6 comedians, and then 2 contestants would ask the comedians whatever. Right. And that show, at every level, it was owned by Byron Allen, who's a comedian. Mm-hmm. The writers were all comedians. All the panelists are comedians. And I'm a comedian in the audience. I was like, I'm on the lowest level here, but we're all paid. And I had a friend one time that was writing on that show. Greg Wilson. He's actually in town this week.
Yeah.
He was a writer on that show.
Okay.
And he seen me in the audience work. He was walking through and he goes, "Hey, come on, I'll show you the writer's room." So he walks me in the back, shows me the writer's room. And as I'm walking back to my seat, I'm just walking right past John Lovitz, or walking right shoulder to shoulder mm-hmm. with him. And I just go, "Hey, you ever think about doing a sequel to High School High?" He just goes, Yeah. I was like, typical Lovitz. That was great. But
that's fucking great.
Or my story I tell on stage is when I got Prince to go. When I was a security guard at the Target Center.
Yeah,
and that was like my biggest celebrity moment. I didn't even know until it happened, that I was making fun of Prince. But he's so little and he looked like a little kid dressed up like Prince. So I was like, who's this kid trying to be? Everyone's like, that's Prince. I was like, that's Purple Rain. He's so little. Can't believe you're dressing like that in public. And Prince just goes, and walks out the door.
What the fuck? That's hilarious. Oh man, that's fucking great, man. You've lived a life in a sense. That's fucking great, dude.
Well, when you mentioned the diverticulitis that I got from the Little Caesars, because it did make my colon explode.
That's fucking crazy.
If my health bar, it was in a video game, it'd been flashing red or whatever. But the doctors came into the hospital room, or the nurse or whatever. At one point, I had a PICC line with 8 different IV lines, and just like, I was near death, rough. And they said, my infection was so bad they couldn't really slow it down, and they go, this still could be fatal. Damn. And I was just like, all right, cool, man. I've had a good run.
And was it like all at once? Like it just kind of happened, or were there things that you look back on now that you're like you could have seen it coming? For sure. If the average person, I always had a thing. I'm not going to the doctor unless I'm dying or deformed. Yeah. So if I can just ride it out, I'm going to ride it out and let my body heal. And there was a lot of times that I thought I was just dealing with food poisoning or dehydration, where like I just sat in a bathtub for like almost a week straight and just like dying without eating and stuff. But then like day 7, I'd be great, and I'm like, back to normal. And this happened a few times over the course of a few years, where it's like, for sure, people do go to the doctor, and for sure they would test me, be like, you have diverticulitis here. Take oral antibiotics, change your diet, fix your shit. Yeah. But because I waited so long, this bubble just grew off of my colon and just popped, and then literal shit got outside of my colon into the area of your body that things shouldn't be hitting. Yeah. And when that happened, it was excruciating. But here's the luckiest part of the whole story: I was living in Las Vegas at the time. I was very, very, very sick in Kevin Price's bathtub for like a full week, just dying. And then I finally was better by 4th of July July 2nd, I did the Hilarious 7 John Hilder show, dying. I had asked to go up earlier because I was just puking in the bathroom. I was like, I don't want to get off the show, but I just want to get on stage again. And I was on stage so weak. I was like, that's how fucking deep, for anybody watching, like how deep comedy is for some of us. Like you're literally on death's door and you're like, just let me get my set in real quick. Yeah, it was rough. And then I was finally getting better the next day, and I had to drive to Prestonburg, Kentucky, which is a good distance. I forget exactly. It was like a full day drive or whatever. Yeah. I drove all the way through 4th of July. Got there and I was still recovering from being sick, where I was just eating ice chips the whole drive. Jeez. Got there, did my show. Drove to St. Louis, did a show. Drove to Minnesota just to see my family, and then I had a couple shows lined up, and then I was going to do a family reunion. Then I was going to come back to Vegas, where I was booked to do a week at the Grand for Don Barnhart's Delirious Room. Right. I was going to feature for a week. I was all excited. I'm like, my first feature week. Oh, yeah. At my parents' house, I'm just getting back to being sick. And my mom goes, if you're staying here, I'm tired of you being sick all the time. We're finally figuring out what the hell's going on with you. You take him to the goddamn doctor. And I was like, it's too weak to argue. And at this point, I was kind of like, hey, what the hell is going on? This is rough, because it was getting really, really, really bad, like yellow bile. And so I go to the doctor, and they test me. They go diverticulitis, oral antibiotics. They let me go the next day. I drive to Minneapolis, 2 hours away from my parents' house, did an open mic. The following day, I'm like walking around the rivers in Minneapolis. It's beautiful. I still got my hospital wristband on from the night before, whatever. And then 2 nights before, Then I go back to my parents' house, 2 hours away from Minneapolis. I'm just eating some ice cream, and my stomach starts to hurt. I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have eaten the ice cream. Kind of got upset stomach. And then that's when my colon ruptured. And I tried to ride it out for like 3 hours. My mom's basement, just like rolling around the floor, like just trying to get comfortable. And like, okay. And I crawled up the stairs, like literally army crawled. And I was like, I need you to bring me to the ER. Yeah. It was a sentence I never thought I'd say in my life. And
brings me to the ER, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this perforated. This is bad now. You need to do surgery." And they were like, "We're gonna get you into surgery right away." And I kept on not wanting to do surgery, but also like they were like, "Yeah, okay, we can wait." And I ended up from that point, when my colon ruptured, I spent 12 full days in the hospital. Like, didn't leave the floor of the hospital. I was on for 12 full days.
Right.
And then they let me out for a little bit with these 2 tubes in my side.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back in finally in September, and they were like, "You have to get the surgery." And I was like, "Fine." Yeah, fine.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I spent a month out of the hospital by these tubes, and I keep on going in there, and like it just wasn't healing. The hole wasn't healing. Like, you need the surgery.
yeah.
And because I waited so long, I didn't need a colostomy bag. So like,
Really?
but they did the whole gut to make a fish and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
I went into surgery, like they were like, "You need to, get your heart rate down." And I was like, I'm going into surgery thinking I'm going to be waking up with part of my intestine sticking out of my side,
Yeah.
and then having to rubber band this bag to it, and that's how I'm going to be shitting. And I'm like, I don't want to do this at all. Like, I don't want to do this. But it was like, there's a percentage chance I might not need that.
Right.
But so I finally, they sedate me. I finally got under, and as soon as they said, "You're awake," my hands just shot up like this.
Yeah.
And I was like it was the whole time I was under sedation. I was just like, I was thinking about it probably.
Yeah.
And it just shoots up, and they go, "You didn't need it." I was like, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah.
And the reason I didn't need it is because I waited so long to have surgery. I kept being so stubborn and being like, "I don't want to have surgery. I don't want surgery." And because I waited, but had I had surgery when they were insisting on it, I 100% would have needed it because it was so badly damaged and like just
Really?
it was. But yeah,
So waiting that long allowed it to heal to a certain extent.
yes,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay.
So there was this doctor. I call him Dr. Doom and Gloom
Yeah.
because he used to come in my hospital room that 12 days, and he'd be like insisting on the. One day he came in, he's like, "You're having the surgery at 4:00. It's already scheduled." And then he come in like 10 minutes later. "All right, we're not doing the surgery." So what the hell's going on? But like, I kept on wanting to leave. I kept on, just not agreeing with, wanting to have surgery. And one day he goes, "How do you want to feel like an idiot?" I go, "What?" He goes, "How do you want to feel like an idiot?" I was like, "What?" He goes, "Do you want to feel like an idiot by having a surgery you didn't need, but it actually is beneficial? Or do you want to feel like an idiot by waiting so long that it's so damaging that now we can't go back? How do you want to feel like an idiot?" Because he goes, "You can feel like an idiot by thinking you're right now." And I was like, "Well, I think there's another option." And so I was like, I didn't get to be like the nah. I was like, I was right. And I don't feel like an idiot. I feel like I was right. I feel like I've definitely won in this.
That is the best phrase in the world. How do you want to feel like an idiot?
Yeah. It's like,
Oh fuck.
you got 2 options to feel like an idiot here. I was like, I don't know that's how this works, dude. But like, yeah,
That's
maybe.
Awesome. Yeah. Fuck, man, that's crazy. That's crazy. Like I've been trying to change my diet recently because I think I might be like gluten intolerant or something like that. I'm starting to notice it. I mean, you just fucking you were bombarded in my bathroom when you first got here. So
Dog,
that shit's not okay. So I've been trying to change it. And I remember talking to you like briefly one time. You were explaining what happened, and that fucking scared the shit out of me. I was like, I gotta start eating better. I gotta do
fiber.
something.
Yeah, get more fiber because that's I think what it was for me is I was eating so much of that pizza with no fiber and nothing else. Like, it was just bad. Yeah, and also though, like I kind of knew it was coming when Brock Lesnar got diverticulitis.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he got it. It was when he was fighting UFC, and they're like, he has diverticulitis. He had a surgery and this and that. Yeah. And then there was somebody that commented, "Oh, that's what happens when you live on a diet of beef jerky."
Oh yeah.
And I went, "Oh crap!" Shit. So I was like, "That's in my future for sure." So I went to the hospital. They said, "You have diverticulitis." I was like, "Yeah,
makes sense.
I saw that one coming." And they're like, "Oh, that's weird." But after that, like I was stuck in my hometown, and I had to become a janitor at my old high school to get out of my
really.
Yeah, so I was literally back in my old high school hallways. I had a couple of my friends that work as custodians. Every time I go back to visit, I'd hang out with my friends.
Oh, shit.
And one of them's the head custodian, and the other one's the night foreman. And they're great jobs in that town. If you have family and whatever, they're easy jobs. They're good paying, good benefits. They're good. They're good jobs.
Yeah.
But like it is kind of funny being like you're back in your old high school and stuff.
Yeah.
And my one friend never graduated, so I kind of joked that it's like says school bring you back. But I'm also like me going back there. I'm like, like now I'm here. Like I graduated, but like I didn't really learn much. I
right.
didn't go on with my degree. And one of my teachers that I had that I knew me very well, I would see him regularly at the school. He was always there late and stuff. Yeah. It's just like, kind of like, there's a bit of that like humbling, like,
yeah.
And here I am pushing a garbage can.
Yeah, it sounds like the start of like a bad movie. It's like, a comedian, and then has to go back to his high school as a janitor.
Dude, it was like, he said it's kind of like Joe Dirt style, where I'm like, I'm a janitor, and like now I have all these crazy stories of this crazy stuff I used to do.
Right.
So I want to tell people, like, oh yeah, I was in movies, I was a wrestler. It's like, now I'm a janitor. But yeah, so as soon as I had just enough money to get out of there, I drove back to LA. Yeah. And then the world shut down.
Damn, that's fucking wild.
Yeah, and I was like, then I traveled the country. So I was like, but when like, before all that, when they told me about to die, I was like, I'd already been to Peru. I was in Mexico City for 3 weeks. And like, it's like, yeah, I've had a good life. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know, it's one of those like,
yeah, dude, that's fucking wild. Damn. And so fucking what is your favorite scene in the country? Because you've been fucking everywhere. So if like you really had to put down roots or like get a residency somewhere, where would you want it to be?
I feel like Vegas is that spot where if it was like you got to pick a place, I'd be like, all right, there's enough going on in Vegas, and if I'm allowed to leave from this place, it was like you can never leave again. I'd be like, all right, let's think about this. Where would I want to, weather-wise and everything? Because I like Vegas, but like also like, if it was a matter of you could never leave this town again. But my base scene, I do like the Vegas scene in terms of what you have here. In terms of the tough rooms that you have to work over, and then you also get the club rooms if you can get those guys, and you can get really, really good rooms. And Vegas itself is a fun town in terms of it's really easy to get around. A very, very, very big, small town with every first class amenity you want to do, and people always coming and going. But like Denver is a cool scene. It has a very woke scene and all that stuff. But like, if you're just starting out, Denver is a great scene because you're doing open mics at bars where there's 50 people in just chairs facing the stage watching a comedy show.
Oh shit!
Watching an open mic.
Really?
Yeah, and you're like, oh, they're here. It's a bar. The bar's open, free to people, but everyone's there to watch a show, and people shush each other, and people,
really?
It's a comedy show.
No shit.
You do 3 minutes in front of a real, audience, and there's a couple rooms like that, that are really, really good for people starting out that you can get in front of great audiences in Denver, and they got it really easy out there. So I had to leave because I liked it and I like what they're doing, but I just didn't have that respect for people that haven't gone through the grit.
Right.
In Vegas, kind of, if you're out here, you've got you've seen something, or you've tumbled out of the car a time or two, and I haven't checked out many other scenes. Like Minnesota's changed a little bit. That was a cool scene. I liked that one in terms of there was a lot of rooms and a lot of really good stuff happening, but weather-wise, you got to deal with, whatever. I started in Seattle. I'm very happy about that because, again, it was very Denver-y in the sense of you got real audiences, you got real clubs that you can do open mics at.
But I like what you said of like there is a thing where you're like, if you haven't gone through the shit, like I understand that because I see, I got my start out here in Vegas. And I've gone out to, Austin area and Arizona, and I can just see there's a difference in how people like react to certain things on stage, or I don't know. There is this weird little toughness you get from being here in Vegas.
Yeah, it's like being an outdoor dog versus a house dog. Like,
right.
You can be a very good house dog, very well trained, but you're not going to be as strong as an outdoor dog.
Yeah.
And the outdoor dog has the ability to also be trained.
Yeah.
And it has that like extra edge to it,
Yeah. And the one thing I saw, especially in Austin, is the fucking circle jerk with some of these open micers that I watched it. I fucking brought my brothers to one of the open mics I was doing. I'm fucking like 20th on this list. And we had to suffer through all these fucking guys going up there. They have 5 minutes, tell a 4-minute story with one half-ass punchline at the end. And then they'd get off stage and go sit with their buddies, and their buddies are like, dude, that was fucking great, and this and that.
Yeah.
And then I go up there and I just start, running through this fucking 5 minutes I've been working on. The host of the show is standing next to my people, and he's like, oh shit, oh, this motherfucker has jokes. And then he sits down with my brothers and shit. He's like, this motherfucker's a comedian. Here we go. And it's like, he even told me, I talked to him after the show. He was like, it was just a little breath of fresh air, man. He goes, these motherfuckers don't get it.
That you don't get challenged in some of those scenes where it's only your friends. Like, that's how I felt about Seattle. I kind of call it the Lord of the Flies, where I was like, there wasn't a lot of established comics that were running stuff out there, because to get established, you had to like leave. Seattle's so far from everything that you can't just like drive 3 hours and be in a new scene. You got to drive 5 just to get to Spokane. You got to drive 4 to get to Portland, and that's not much different than Seattle.
Right.
And then after that, you got to drive another 7 to get to freaking, San Francisco. And you're like, that's not much different than Seattle.
Right.
So you're not getting a lot of variation, so you have to go far away for a long time, so you don't get the ability to run rooms.
Right.
And go on the road. We're in like Minneapolis. You got people that work the road regularly that will have a Tuesday or a Wednesday bar show or a bar mic that they're hosting, and then Thursday through Sunday they're on the road actually doing gigs anywhere else. And they come back and it's like, okay, this guy's established. You can drive 8 hours and be, you can drive these places and be in completely different realms. Seattle, there was this pocket of comedians that kind of had just started that similar to Denver, but again, Denver, you can have established comedians that can go to their spots and come back, and you have a little more headlinery vibe.
Right.
Seattle was just this Lord of the Flies. These like this group of really woke writers that were kind of funny about things that were like, no, this is how we want comedy to be, and they kind of infiltrated a little bit, and like I didn't really mesh well with them as much. I came to LA right away.
What do they call that? Like alt comedy?
Here's the funniest part about this. This is where it gets even more funny, because and if you go to like I said, I went to LA and I saw what real comedy was, and I was like, oh wow. And but if you go to YouTube and look at Bill Burr alt comedy, he has this rant about alt comedy, and unironically and unconnected to Bill Burr's rant, this one comedy room in Seattle that didn't like me, they at first they did, but like they did a joke that they claimed was pro killing hookers, and I was like, no, it was pro time travel. There's a difference. And his rant and their name of their comedy club, completely unconnected but also the same. He goes, these woke comics, alt comedy, the safe space where no one can get hurt and no one can do no wrong. They cultivate this safe area, this comedy womb.
Oh,
that was the name of their room, the comedy womb. And I was like, as I heard this rant, I go, that's literally what they called it. That's literally they didn't.
That's fucking hilarious.
Wow, man, that's great. He nailed it. They nailed it. Everyone's on fucking brand here, man. This is cool.
That's fucking hilarious.
So I started doing the outside rooms of Seattle, the spots that none of the Seattle people would want to drive to, because it was like a 30-40 minute drive out, but I didn't care. In Minnesota, you drive 40 minutes to see your friend's house, whatever. And like, it's just, everything's far away. So I was like, this is cool. And I was doing those spots, getting more time. And then when I went to LA, I just never told no one how long I've been doing comedy. If they asked, I would like lie and say 5-ish years or whatever. And I was a year in, and people were like putting me on stuff, and I was getting booked on those. Like, dope, man, cool. And so
that's kind of a ballsy move though, to lie about it, because like a year in, I was struggling to put together like 5 minutes. So like to get booked and shit like that, that was way out of like there was no way I would have accepted like, oh, come feature for me. It's like, I barely have 5 minutes. There's no way I could do that.
Yeah, but again, I started in Seattle where we had real audiences to test stuff on right away, and I was getting like spots on weekend spots where I felt really confident about the material I was doing.
Right.
And it was working in those kind of rooms. Like I wasn't being pushed away, and people weren't like, I kind of did the same thing when I did pro wrestling though too. I showed up to this wrestling camp, and I'd only done like a few matches in like small bars that like me and my friends kind of trained each other how to do the moves, and like this one guy like gave us access to his ring and shit. Yeah. And we did a couple bar shows, but like for a good chunk of it, I had a broken arm, so I couldn't even like really wrestle. I was there for it,
right?
But like I only got to do a few matches and the stuff we did outside without the audiences. But I showed up to an actual promotion in Minneapolis, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm trained. I've had like 15, 20 matches," and they were like, "Okay," and then they go, "Get in the ring." Come, they say, come to training camp tomorrow, get in the ring, we'll see what you know, and we'll base your training camp fees off of that, because it's $2,500 for a year's training camp, and most people that would take the 1 year course, by month 8 to 10 is when they'd have their debut match for this company, and it was a training grounds that would feed people into OVW and WWE. Okay. We have a couple guys that started from our camp that were on WWE TV.
No shit.
They came straight from our camp, and I went to go watch it because at the time, AJ Styles, who's still a current wrestler, he was wrestling back then as like an indie guy, and I just knew him from whatever, and I wanted to go watch him. Like, so we had like people that come through, but I was like, okay, it's $2,500 and whatever. I showed up to training camp, and I go through all the drills and everything, and the promoter pulls me aside, and he goes, "Okay, don't tell anybody. I can tell you're trained. I can tell you know what you're doing. You got a few bad habits. We have to untrain to get you crisper for what we're doing here. But I'm not going to charge you anything for training camp. Just show up, and you can get in the ring with everyone."
No shit.
And I was like, "No shit." And he goes, "And when you get yourself some professional-looking gear, I'll put you in a match." I go, "As soon as I get professional-looking gear, I'm in a match." He goes, "Yeah." Wow. I go online right away, and I start designing some shit. I go on the PlayStation SmackDown game, and I create a character, and I designed my stuff in there because I'm like, well, it looks good, whatever. And then I drew it out on a piece of paper. I went to a library, scanned it, and I emailed it to a dude that I found online that made gear, and it was like a couple $100, like $100 some odd bucks, to have him custom make this gear.
Yeah.
2 months later, it was for him to put it all together and stuff. It shows up, and I got put in a match right away. Damn. And so all the wrestlers, they're all like, they didn't know I wasn't paying for camp. But also I had a DUI, so I didn't have a license. I just so happened to live on the way for the main promoter. This guy, Sheriff, he would drive from the same town. Right. I was on the way in the same town, different side of town. He was on the rich side. I'm in an apartment. He's like, "I got no problem picking you up and bringing you to camp." He goes, "As long as you don't mind leaving when I leave." I was like, "Well, whatever." Now, again, all the wrestlers don't know that. They're just like, "What the fuck? Darrin's coming with the sheriff, leaving with the sheriff, whatever, special treatment, whatever." And then I get put in this match right away. But the first match I got put in was a 10-man battle royal.
Oh shit!
Which on paper is just like, from a wrestler perspective, it's like punches, you can't really do any spots, so you're not really taking any big bumps, more spot based and whatever, and punches that aren't real and fake stomps and stuff.
Wait, it's not real.
But in my situation, it was a hazing drill. They threw me in a live match with 9 other wrestlers that were pretty upset with me.
Oh shit!
And that had full ability to chop the absolute shit out of me. Yeah. And the open hand chop is the most painful thing in wrestling, because you have to be loose and relaxed to make it sound good. But after a while, even if you tense, it's just there's hitting you. You're like, God damn it! And they're hitting my back, double chops to my back. Yeah. And like, I was raw, and so the next day in training camp, a wrestler was rewatching the tape, and he comes in middle of camp. He goes, 43. And they were like, huh? He goes, he took 43 chops. Damn. But the review that I was proud of, because it was my first time being written up by an actual, like, a reviewer that review. Yeah. We're an independent wrestling show, but he reviews wrestling shows, and we're one of them. He said the highlight of the show, the show is pretty standard, but the highlight of the show was the battle royal where a newcomer, my name was Chase Helms at the time, he said he took so many chops, his chest looked like raw, bloody hamburger meat. But to me, all I'm paying attention to is I'm in a wrestling review, and I had a professional wrestling match for my very first time. I had a pro wrestling match in gear as a pro wrestler. This guy wrote me up, and I sent it to my mom. She's like crying. She's like, why would I want to read this? Bloody hamburger meat? I was like, yeah, I guess it sounds bad. I go, I'm fine. My chest's a little sore. But then a couple months later, we're in a 32-man battle, 32-man battle royal.
Mm-hmm.
It was like for this big weekend we had where we're mixing with people that are actually currently wrestling on the big times and stuff right now and whatever.
Yeah.
But in battle royals, very rarely do they have planned out spots. You know, it's mostly just they'll tell you who they want. If there's a storyline working on, they'll tell you, so, hey, look for so and so. After so and so goes out, so and so's going to throw you, and people will pass the word along because they want it. You know, oh, so and so eliminated so and so, drama.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like, all right, guys, we're 32-man battle royal. We're only going to have 2 spots in this, and I'm just like, kind of in the back, just put my tape on, going, this isn't nothing to do with me. I'm new enough to this company. Spots are pretty big deals.
Yeah.
And they go, one of them, Nate Bash, who's this kind of high-flying black dude that, like, he goes, he's going to jump off the top, and we're going to catch him and crowd surf him out.
Oh,
and he was going
yeah.
to kind of stage dive from the top rope into the wrestler, so be ready for that. And he goes, then we're going to take Chase Helms, and I go, huh? He said, me? What the hell? He goes, when I whistle, everyone stop hitting each other and just get in a line. He's going to be tied up in the corner by 2 of us, and you just come chop him.
That motherfucker.
I was just like, what?
That was just your thing? You just get chopped to hell all the time?
Yeah, but it worked in my favor because people, if anyone in a regular match chopped me, the crowd just blew the shit out of him.
Really?
Like, stop it, he's had enough. Like, no.
Jesus.
But yeah, again, it was kind of like a hazing thing.
Yeah.
And one of the wrestlers was like, all right, man, you've paid your dues.
Yeah.
We can tell, whatever. And then that promotion got shut down. And all the wrestlers went to other promotions, and no one was willing to like vouch for me because they're like, no, sorry, dude. We got every man for themselves. We all got to find our own work. So I was like, damn it. So I was like, kind of still back to brand new again. I'm like,
right.
So I went down to North Carolina, kind of did it all over again.
Right.
And I started getting on this company that trained the Hardys and trained all these guys. But it was like 45 minutes away from where I was living. And the gear I got, the guy actually messed up my gear. Like, he just completely messed it up. But he was friends with the promoter, and the promoter was mad that it was a whole issue with the gear in that situation.
Yeah.
And I just kind of quit. But then in Washington, I wrestled again. I
really?
I was managing a GNC. This dude comes in, and he's got joint. He's looking for joint support. And I was like, "Oh, you doing like submission wrestling?" He's like, "Actually, pro wrestling." I was like, "Dope, where at?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, so and so." I go, "I'd love to get in a match." He goes, well, and he kind of same thing. He goes, "Yeah, I trained at the company for a while," and he goes, "I've been actually training. I'm actually a referee right now, but like I'm about to make my wrestling debut and all that stuff."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Cool, yeah, but anyways, what's the guy's information?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "I'm telling you, you're not gonna go. That's fine. What's the guy's information?" And I showed up to one of the shows and I helped set the ring up, and then I left. And the next show, I get a phone call. I'm at my GNC, it's working, and I get a phone call, and they go, it was one of the guys with the wrestling. He goes, "Hey, are you gonna come tonight and help with the ring?" I go, probably not. I'm just gonna stay at the store." He goes, "Oh, Caden wanted to know if Caden's the promoter," and he goes, "He just want to know if you can come and bring your gear." And I go, "Huh?" He goes, "Yeah, he's got a match. He needs somebody to fill in for." I go, "Yeah, cool, I'll be there." And I had no practice. They go, "When was their last match?" And I go, "It was like 2 years ago." It was like 6 years ago. It had been a while. Like, it was in Minnesota, and this had been a while. Like, this 2009. It'd been 5 years since my last match. I told him it'd been a year or two. It'd been 5 years since my last match.
Wow.
Hadn't been in a ring, and I just showed up. And I showed up at like 5:30, so the fans already kind of started coming in. So I didn't get a chance to go in the ring and take a bump. I didn't get in the ring and like hit the ropes. I hadn't been in the ring in 5 years. Damn. And 5 or almost 6 years. And until I show up in the ring, and immediately I roll my ankle in the first like couple spots. Like, I just stepped wrong. The camera's a little loose. I roll my ankle, and there's a crowd member. The video's still online. The crowd member's filming it, and he's like, as soon as I come out, I'm doing a couple moves, and the guy goes, "I'm already kind of liking this new guy." And then I roll my ankle. He goes, "Oh," and then I hit him with his arm drag. He goes, "Good recovery." And there's on my side about stuff. But the referee in that match was that dude from the GNC. He was like, "What?" And I'll go,
"Yeah,
what's up, dude? Yeah, I'm here in a match. You're still the ref. What's going on?" And then I had to drive him home that day, and he was just like, I was like, "I told you, man." Not nobody, but like, And that's kind of like comedy. It's showing up and be like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not just a random asshole.
Yeah, I know I look like that, but
yeah. And so, how long did you do the wrestling before that 5 or 6 year break? Like, how long were you doing it?
On and off for a while. I started when I was like my first match. I was doing backyard stuff when I was like 16 or whatever. But then when we were 17, still at like 11th grade, met this dude that had a ring, and he put us in matches where we were in bar shows in central Minnesota for local, lower level indie shows, but actual indie shows. So when I was 17, I was doing that, signing autographs for kids and stuff. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I reffed for him a couple times. I was just kind of doing stuff in and out because I had a broken arm for a little bit. I broke snowboarding. So I couldn't really wrestle sometimes, whatever. And then I moved to Minneapolis and went to watch a match, and that's when I talked to the promoter, and I did a couple years of that. So it was on and off from when I was 17 to like 22 or whatever. Really? I got to wrestle in the First Avenue building, which is Prince's building back in Minnesota. Right. I wrestled this guy named Asylum, that's just 300-pound power lifter. Right. My mom came to that match, and like I told her, I was like, I'm match number 3, so pay attention to that match. And she's like, I don't want to watch. I go, don't worry, the guy's like my size. Then the match number 3 comes out, and he comes out first. I guess my mom tells me the story where she's like, I'm talking to the guy next to me, and I told him, saying my son's match number 3, and he's a wrestling guy his size. And match 3 comes out, and the big guy comes out, and the guy looks at my mom and goes, that your son? My mom goes, no. She goes, your son that big? I was like, no. He must have told me the wrong match. And then I ran out there. She's like, oh my God, no. So he beats me down in the ring, whatever. And then I go up the stairs, or the locker room's up these steps, and that's where my mom was watching from, was up the steps. And I'm walking up there, selling the match and everything. And my name at the time was Chase Helms. It wasn't Darrin Chase. Mm-hmm. And she's yelling, Darrin. And I'm just like blowing her off. I go into the locker room, I throw on a t-shirt, and so I go back up there. It's like, don't call me that right now. I'm okay. I was like, do you see right now? I'm okay. I'm going to go back to acting like I'm hurt now because everyone needs to think I'm hurt. But I'm okay. But yeah, I did that on and off, and I probably haven't had my last match. If someone wanted me to have a match tomorrow, I'd be like, yeah, all right, cool. Yeah.
Was it ever something that you were like gonna make a career out of, or was it just something you enjoyed doing, so you did it on and off?
I kind of thought that. I mean, I would have liked to make a career out of it. I don't know. I always visualized myself doing some kind of a entertainment kind of thing, right? And wrestling was just one of those things. I was like, I can do this, so I will. Mm-hmm. But like when it comes to like actually being a fan of pro wrestling to the degree that wrestling fans want you to be wrestling when they talk to you about wrestling, it's like I like wrestling for I watch it for different things. I like the stunt element of things more than the storyline of the flamboyant pageantry. Right. There's this part of it I don't like and whatever. And then I liked selling people on making them think it was real, where I'd bump in a different way than people would actually fall, where we're like, ooh, I don't think you're supposed to land that way. Like, ooh, I think that was a mistake. And it was like, I would do a lot of that stuff where people are like, oof. Then after the show, they're like, how did you get up from that? And I was like, I liked that response where I was like, right. I'm a tough motherfucker. Yeah. And, whatever. But I never really knew, like, to make it in pro wrestling, like, I was never going to put in that kind of work. There was a small period of time where I was like, that would be cool. But yeah, I don't think it was ever a thing I really thought I was going to do. Okay. Full time. Mm-hmm. Had that one promotion not closed down, absolutely. Like, but once that closed down, it was just like to get back into it. And then I go to North Carolina, and I realized the people down here, they just have a different commitment to it. They have a different way of talking about it. They have a different way of memorizing the matches and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, that's just not. It wasn't what I wanted to do in my early 20s. I was, it was just different. But I appreciate doing it, and like I said, I would still be in matches and stuff, and like I like the element of like looking like the everyman, like that dude's not looking like a pro wrestler. He looks like us, and like people kind of cheered me for that reason. Like you're not like fucking jacked and crazy or whatever. It was more of like let's see if I do this. That was kind of my attitude. Everyone was like, let's see. Yeah. Here I am. That's awesome. But I don't know. It's an easy transition from wrestling to comedy, because you've been in front of audiences in tights, and you know how to lose, and so if you're bombing, you're just like, okay, well, this is just doing the job tonight, I guess. Yay.
So, question I ask all my guests is, what is one of your most memorable bombs on stage? I feel like everybody has one that just kind of sticks in their head.
I mean, there's the rough sets. There was one show though. There was a podcast that called The Art of Bombing that I didn't tell this story on. That I was like, after I left, I was like, damn it, because it was just one of those like shut nights. I'll just like, man, in hindsight, it's gonna be funny, but the night it happened. So it was shortly after I was recovering from diverticulitis. I had a headlining set at a bowling alley. And I hadn't been doing a lot of long sets. So it was my first time to do like a 45-minute set since all the shit went down and being in the hospital. Like, I was just like, oh man. Again, it's Minnesota, so I have family that wants to come out and support. And some of my family's come out a few different times. And a couple of them that, I'm like, all right, but a few of them I'm like, I know that this isn't you're not my demographic. You're great, but I'm not. I know who you are. I know you're just there smiling and supportive, but this isn't. I don't know why you'd think this is funny or whatever. And one night my family all showed up that night. So it was, the guy that went up first, then the feature, and she had a bunch of people there to support, and she did great. She crushed it. And then I had to go up, and most of the audience was my family and her family, and the way that they had them seated in the stage is over here, and it was just awkward. So they're kind of separated, and no one's really in the middle. A couple people, whatever. And it was just my family walks in, and they all got, again, in hindsight, hilarious. And it'll be funny in the movie to make the prop people have to do this. But at the time, I was like, what the fuck are you doing? No. They all had my face on sticks. Like they're at a baseball game or something. And I was like, listen, you can't.
Yeah.
Like there's 24 people in the audience. You're 12 of them.
Yeah.
If you all got my face on sticks, everyone's looking at you guys, and you're the attention. And a lot of them are really funny people. They're entertaining people. They're people that if they would start acting, they could probably steal the damn show. From the table. Whatever. Like they're fun people. They're just it's like I'm not here for that. I'm here to just try to get through my material. Yeah. And it's probably not going to be great. And also the sound was messing up at one point. So the owner of the bowling alley shows up like 10 minutes into my set, and apparently where he was sitting, the sound didn't sound great. So he had the host go up and just start adjusting the sound. So I'm getting that feedbacky stuff. And I'm just like, could you guys not hear the first part? And so do I have to do those jokes over?
Jesus.
Man, it was a brutal show. Yeah. It was one of those like, I'm headlining, like, you did great. I'm like, hey, fucking, don't ever talk, I did one show. It was a showcase show in Oakland. I was driving down to LA, and I just did a spot, a 7-minute spot, and I was still pretty new. Where the room was sparse. There's people playing like chess and like comics. It just very sparse room, one of those rough rooms. And at one point, I just go, hey, does anybody have any questions? And someone goes, how much time you got left? And I was like, I'm going to do every second of it now. Yeah. I'm not just going to leave. And I was just talking about the plants on the walls. Like, there's plants, 1 plant, 2 plant, 3 plant. It's like, I'm just going to, until you come pull this mic out of my hand now, this is going to happen. So that was a fun
It's kind of like the Bill Burr, the Philly incident, where he's just like, how much time? 7 minutes. Yeah. Here we go. It's like, just count it down.
That was very similar in sense, but it was a lot sadder of a room. But oh man, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's
there's so many.
There's just the ones that are like you'll do a show one night and everything goes great, and you go into the next night with the confidence that carries into where that audience doesn't know why you're so confident, and sometimes it takes that little bit of like, and for the way my act kind of works, I guess I don't know, because I've had this experience where like the one night I would crush, and the next night same act, and it's like, ooh, this is something I'm half second off, or maybe whatever. And it's like, oh, maybe I came into it a little too hard, a little too strong, because I was so like sure of it working, whatever. Yeah. So I'm like, damn it,
So it's like an overconfidence can kill it.
Sometimes, yeah, but it's the ever changing amoeba of comedy.
Right,
Like you
right.
never know what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Like maybe like one show I was headlining in Arizona somewhere. The only time I had someone wait outside for the show and want to fight me and probably want to stab me.
Oh shit.
There was two dudes in the bar. It was a bar show where people had to pay to be in there, but like if you came into the bar, there was like, hey, we'll add it to your tab. There's a comedy show happening, and people are like, all right, whatever. But there was a couple people in there for the comedy show, and these two dudes are in there that were in there before, and they told me, hey, this is a comedy shop, and they go, it's fine, whatever, and they're drinking, and they were talking through the show, and finally during my set, I was just like, dude, what's going on with these guys? And I don't roast people. I'm not good at that kind of thing, but I was just letting them know I didn't appreciate them talking.
Yeah.
And they were very upset about that because they were talking about some stuff that later I found out, and they were very drunk, and apparently they had came in very drunk because they were mourning the loss of one dude's sister who just died that morning.
Oh shit.
And I was like, why are you in a fucking comedy show? But they were in a bar and they were so drunk and they didn't care what was happening on stage, and they're just and
right.
But at that point it's too late. So this dude's all fucking pissed off at me.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
fucked.
so he was like waiting outside with both of them, and like it was one of those nights that there's some nights where I might have been like, all right, let's go with the book. But that night I was like, oh, and the host was just like, I'll walk you to your car. I was like, yeah, let's just do that. Let's just I'll just get out of here. I don't want to. I do feel like, but I feel like maybe I should have known that, or maybe they should have known that, or the bar knew that. Why they let them stay?
Right.
I was like, man, well, the guys, they hated me for and that
Yeah, I mean, it's probably good that you didn't like tear into them in any way, because they probably would have rushed the stage. Being
no,
in
they were close to the point of wanting to rush the stage. And I wasn't like tearing into them, but I was like commenting on them and like
right.
maybe tearing them into it to my minor degree. I do it, whatever. I don't know, but they were not happy.
Yeah.
So
damn.
But that's just, those are the fun shows that make you appreciate the other ones, and get you prepared for the big wins that come every now and then. You get a good audience, and
that's why I like doing the Wise Guys mic like once a week, because after doing all these fucking shitty open mics, I go to that one and I'm like, all right, this is what I do it for. All right,
that is an easier one, but I mean, not easier, but it's nice to have an audience of people that's at a comedy club and they're like, we're here to laugh, and you're like, okay.
So I guess we'll wrap this bitch up. Do you have any social media, anything you want to plug?
DARRINCHASE, Darrin Chase. At Darrin Chase on pretty much everything.
Okay.
DARRINCHASE. I got Linktree, linktr.ee/Darrin Chase. Has a bunch of stuff on there. After Hour Pizza show coming up May 25th, Wise Guys on May 28th, and
all right,
some other stuff sprinkled in the middle of that, and who knows, but
perfect.
That's that, and all I can,
and I'll have all the links in the description, so easy, one click, go find them. Follow me, _Hernandez_comedy on Instagram. Other than that, if you're a new viewer, fucking subscribe and like and all that bullshit. And stay tuned. I have a bunch of your favorite Vegas comics coming on here. So stay tuned. I love you, dirty cocksuckers, and I'll see you later.